Welcome to this episode of the Justice Team podcast on the Justice Team Network. I'm your host, Bob Simon. We give practical how-tos to lawyers. We have lawyers on to help educate people on such important things as trial practice, as we're going to talk about the Ashley Laiken today, and fresh off of a huge multi-billion-dollar verdict once again. So Ashley, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So first, how do our listeners, viewers find you?
So I'm at Omega Law. And what do you want?
Yeah, if they want to reach out to you, how they hit you? I mean, you're going to slide into your DMs, text you, email you. What's the best way?
Slide into my DMs. Should I provide my cell phone number?
If you want. I mean, this is you could do whatever you like.
So my cell phone's 562-307-4159. You can text me anytime. Email is aal@omegalaw.com.
Wow. And, you just had another big verdict with Lourdes DeArma, so I see outside here, and we're at Torrance in the studio. And how many cases have you guys tried together?
I think 4.
Wow.
Yeah, I think 4 cases.
And when you do these trials, can you just walk everybody kind of through the process? Let's start with, if you're doing it in a team, how do you divvy up responsibilities, work on scheduling, that kind of stuff?
So 2 things. One, it depends on who I'm trying the case with, because I really want to find out. And I do not believe in trying cases alone.
I agree.
I think that's, I understand that sometimes economically you can't have 2 attorneys, but if you can, I don't care how big or small the case is. I really think it's really best for your client to have 2 different people looking at the evidence and working on it. It depends on who it is. I really try to find out what somebody else's strengths are. And I also try to find out what do they want to work on and what do I want to work on? Like, what are the things that I'm not really that comfortable with? And would this be a good case for me to work on those skills? With Lourdes, and I intentionally went to Omega in part, a large part was to try cases with her again because we have such good synergy, and also because we're best friends. So she's like the person I can be brutally honest with, and she can be brutally honest with me. And even if we get mad at each other for 15 minutes, like, we're going to get over it. With her, her strength is jury selection. Mm-hmm. My strength is opening statement. She is a PowerPoint genius. I feel very tech stupid. Okay. So for her, she does these crazy elaborate PowerPoints. So she typically will handle closing. I will typically handle the plaintiffs. And I think she's going to tell you why.
Yeah. Well, that's also like the hardest part of a trial. Well, the hardest skill set to learn is jury selection and then the direct of the plaintiff. Because I truly believe that's where you win or lose cases.
Yeah.
Those two touch points.
Yeah.
And I know you're very, very good at drawing out the emotion from the plaintiff, getting out those stories. What's the process?
Oh, so this last one was tough. And, some make it easier. Some plaintiffs are overly dramatic, and you kind of have to try to get them to calm down a little bit so that, because when you're dealing with a jury, it's like their story has to resonate with 12 people, or at least 9 of the 12, right? And you have to win them over. So it's kind of like this delicate balance where you're trying to get people to be authentic and you want them to tell their story, but it can't be too dramatic or too unbelievable. Or in the alternative, some people, they really downplay it. And you can tell that there's context there. Like, they've been through so much in their life that they've just learned how to swallow their emotions and just truck on through life. And that also doesn't really resonate. With this particular guy, this was kind of funny because he was one of those people who's super positive. Mm-hmm. I love his positive attitude, but I need to feel,
something here and there.
Yeah. And in this case, it was a massive, and we have the whole thing on video. It's really, really, it was a massive injury, massive impact. He was 27, shattered his knee, broke his ankle, and to this day at 31, he's walking with a limp. So with him,
I heard that did you guys turn down like a $2 million offer to try this case? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you hit a home run, but I mean, that takes some serious.
Dude, when I tell you, the jury got hung on one point on general damages, and I almost peed myself. Like I was pacing the courtroom. I was like, you know what? Why do I do this? Why? I don't have to be a trial attorney. I don't have to put myself through this. I'm tired. I'm hungry. And I was like pacing and I was like, you know what? I don't know if I want to do this. Like, this is too much. And then like when they finally like, you know, you hear the 2 buzzes, I was like white knuckling Lourdes' hand. I was like, please. Cause all I wanted, at that point, I didn't even care what the amount was. I didn't want him to regret trusting us. That's the one thing I didn't want. And he turned down the 2 million. Like he was like, no, I mean, he had so much faith, but, just real quick to circle back to your last question. I prepped him so many times. Like we got together so many times and I was very careful because one thing I really don't like is when attorneys will tell the client like what to say. No, I needed to, because then they're on the stand and they're like, oh God, what did you tell me to say? Like, I don't want that.
It cannot be like script.
No.
There's no script.
Yes. There was one point where I had him come to my home. And I would ask him a question and he would tell me one answer. And then I would ask a couple others. And then I would come back to that question and I would ask him the same question. And he would tell me something else. I was like, oh my God, Kevin. And it was so funny because my daughter came running in from the other room and she sits at the table and she's like, Kevin, we're going to work on this. Okay, we're going to get this right. And I was like, thanks, Zoe. And
I love this dynamic. You know, you as a single mom, you have 2 teenage daughters. Right?
I have a teenage daughter and a teenage son. Yeah.
Teenage son. And it's just the 2, I can just see this dynamic. Just like, looks like a sitcom. But you have most people won't spend the time with their clients in their homes or in your homes, right? I think that's a huge mistake, first of all. Do you, when you structure the direct or the plaintiff, how do you do it?
So when I structure the direct, I do it dependent upon what the issues in the case are. And because sometimes it's not necessary to tell their childhood story, and sometimes you really do need that context. So in this particular case, you know, I had a hard time getting him to tell his emotional story. So and that's why I brought him to my home.
Love it.
I was like, we need to feel like family. I don't want you to talk to me like I'm your lawyer. Like we need to feel like family. And we sat, we ate, my kids were there. We watched a little football together. Like I really took the time. And I just asked him as many questions as I could to dig into, and anybody that knows me knows I will dig into your soul. Like I don't even try to lie to me. I'm going to see it in your eyes. Right. And I did that. And then from that, like having an understanding of who this person is, where his like trauma points are, like the things in his life. Like I learned why this guy keeps everything inside. His older brother had committed suicide.
Wow. So you learned that why?
Because I was trying to figure out like, he's so positive. And I'm like, he went through something that would break 99% of people, especially at his age. How are you so positive? And number one, I've learned that that's him naturally. But number 2, I learned that when his brother died, he kind of had to step into the role of the man of the family. Mm-hmm. And the way that he was raised is you don't cry, okay? You deal with it and you take care of your family and you work. And so he stepped into that role. And I'm like, okay, so now I know. So what I did was I asked him questions. What's your relationship with your mom like? What's your relationship with your sister like? Like these people that he loves so much. Then I got into obviously the things that he did before the injury that he can't do now, you know, how that makes him feel. Turns out his smile, he won best smile in high school. He lost 2 of his teeth in the accident. Like,
see, these are the things you would never, unless you spent the time with your client, you never be able to pull it out of them. It makes it real for the jury. Mm-hmm. They can sense if you have that relationship with your client, right? They can
By the way, I talked to his best friend. I talked to his cousin. I talked to his girlfriend. I talked to him. I talked to his mom. Like, I talked to everybody that was around him.
I love it.
So that I could figure out what to even ask him. And
so whenever I don't like to rehearse everything with my client. I go through blocks and stories and then just have a conversation when they're on the stand. Mm-hmm. I try to draw the emotion towards the end before I turn it over to defense. And I usually ask questions that I've never scripted to them before. Like the ones that can pull the emotion out of them.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like, you talk so much about your son. Do you feel like less of a dad because of what happened to you? And then you just, because you know the touch point, you know when you could trigger it. So do you do the same thing? Like, how do you tell him it's coming? Do you tell him I'm going to ask you this question?
No, because I don't even know it's coming, to be honest. So when I have him on the stand, and I don't like it, when they like talk to the jury, no. Here, it's just you and me in this room. Because I want them to be honest. Like, don't even think about that. Like, just talk to me. So when that happens and you get into that, and I'm really good about listening to the answers. You know, some people will have like their outline of questions and they don't even really care what the answer is. They just want to make sure that they check off all their questions. That's a huge mistake in my opinion. So I listen to the answer.
You can have notes and come back and
of
make
course.
sure you didn't miss something, but
yes.
be in the moment.
Yes. So I listen to the answer and that usually prompts the follow-up So oftentimes the questions that are unscripted, I didn't even know I was going to ask them. I just hear something and I kind of go after that point. And this guy had never cried with me. Like I showed him the video, like, you know, I'd seen it on his face, and then all of a sudden I had asked him a question about his smile on this. That was the thing that did it. And he broke down and cried. And afterwards, the jurors had commented that they're like, yeah, you know, they knew it was genuine. And understand the other thing in this jurisdiction, we were, you know, Alhambra,
You're supposed to be a conservative jurisdiction. When I saw that, I was like, oh, because when we have chats, like you got this judge in this jurisdiction. I was like, oh, that's not a good draw.
Yeah, and you know, he's a minority, and we didn't have one person on our jury that was, you know, of the same.
Really?
Yeah, and that also made me really nervous. Yeah, and I will tell you, after opening statement, because I'm not going to lie, I kind of killed it. After opening statement, I went up to defense counsel and I was like, $3 million. And he was like, what? No. I was like, yeah, $3 million. He's like, why? I was like, why not? And he's like, this case isn't worth it. And I said, well, why do you think it's not worth it? He was like, were we in the same room during jury selection? He was like, you need to learn to read the room, Miss Laiken. And I was like, okay.
This is the thing that defense lawyers and lawyers are just inexperienced can't get over. They think that when they hear all these bad things from the jury during jury selection, that is good for them. But those aren't the jurors on the case. Those are the ones that get off.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, we heard all that hate. Guess what? They're not on the jury, but all these people that heard it and disagreed are.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is there was one, and you just never know, right? Yeah. And this is, you just don't know. There was one juror that I was like, she's the one that's against us. And when Lou did the closing and she mentioned the numbers, I was watching her. She like laughed. Right? Turns out, I love this. When the jury deadlocked, the reason they deadlocked was because she was too high.
What?
She brought it down a little bit to avoid a mistrial. Wow. Okay? To this day, her name is Diamond. I love her and she texts me.
Oh, that's great.
We became friends. Yeah. So it's like you can't get so caught up in like their facial expressions.
So after, you know, are you mindful of your client during when your client's up there telling the story, do you kind of try to mirror it to the audience, the jurors that you know that are up there?
No. And maybe I should. I honestly get so caught up in the moment and I get so caught up with whatever it is they're telling me. Part of me is asking the questions I'm asking because I'm genuinely curious. Yeah. And sometimes, like you said, like you'll ask a question you didn't have scripted and that might be the question. Usually that is the question where they finally break down.
Yeah, and that's like juries know when it's genuine, when it's not. They know when it's rehearsed and
they
when it's
really
not.
Do. They really. I always tell my clients like, I'm not a magician. I deal with the facts, I deal with the law, and I'm going to do the best I can. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what they really think about you. Wow. So.
And, you know, one other moment I'm going to switch to, you know, anybody that's watching or listening, reach out to Ashley. I mean, it's a masterclass on trial practice, on preparation, and we talk about this all the time. We live and breathe it. I mean, we're in these different virtual chats. It's nice to see you today, by the way, because I haven't seen you in person in a while, but we see each other on chats and ask questions. But it's so powerful if you reach out to folks like Ashley just to get another mindset, right? To be able to bounce ideas off of. Because I learned something just, you know, sitting here talking to you. But crossing over, splitting up the duties in this trial, I've learned that when you have scheduling issues, like you don't want to overburden your partner on a whole day, right? I'm always mindful of that. Like we're doing 5 experts a day, it's a lot, you know? And there was a moment where scheduling issues and you stepped in over lunch and just, I want to hear the story because it's so cool.
So normally what happens is I'll take the damages because, you know, I love medicine and I like to watch surgeries and procedures. Like I geek out on it. Lourdes loves like the technical stuff. Like, you know, she'll do usually liability. This case, because of scheduling, worked out a little differently. And I was very cognizant of what you just said. And I even pushed her. I'm like, hey, if you're going to do all these experts on this day, like, give me a witness, because you can't do the whole day. Like and I didn't want to do that either. So we kind of crossed over a little bit. Like I took the PMQ, and, she took the defense expert. And so we kind of were forced to really learn the whole thing. Okay. The way scheduling got messed up, one witness carried over to the next morning. It resulted in her doing the entire morning of witnesses. And so we go to lunch. I can tell she's kind of tired. And I kind of had a small inkling she might do this, but I was like, please, baby Jesus, don't do it. So we get to where we were having lunch, and she just looks at me, and I look at her, and she looks at me. Am I allowed to cuss?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
Sure.
So she looks at me, and I look at her. I'm like, fuck, really? And she was like, oh, God damn it, Lou, no. And I was like, all right, fine. Fuck it. We're just going to do it. And I sat down and I pulled out a piece of paper and I just started writing the questions. And she and I telepathically communicated, Ashley, I'm tired. I'm going to need you to take the defense expert. And I was like, I could have prepped for this last night. And I was like, but I'm looking at her. I was like, she's really tired. She can't do it. So I just, and I was like, that's where, like, even if you're nervous, if you prepare, you fall back on preparation. So when I got up to do it, and I mean, was I scared? Oh my God, yeah. But it turns out, like, during, when the jury came and talked to us after, and we had quite a few jurors that stayed to talk to us, like they really wanted to stay. The defense expert didn't even come up during deliberations, which means he was totally neutralized. But yeah.
And knowing who that expert is, he's very charismatic. He's charming. I've hired him. He's a very good witness.
Yeah.
So to neutralize him is a huge win.
Yeah, it was a little scary, but we got it done. Yeah.
No, but well, congratulations on another successful result. And
Thank
I think
you.
You're defining like true trial practice, because you've been at this craft for a while, and I'm very happy you have the opportunity to try a lot of cases, on your time and be able to do it, with two teenagers and being a single mom and doing all that stuff. So I appreciate you coming on the show, Ashley. And
Thank
again,
you.
reach out to her. She gave out her cell number, 562 from Long Beach, right?
Yeah, Long Beach.
Along the LBC.
Yeah.
We had an OPP thing on the last episode, so it was pretty cool.
Heck yeah.
Well, Ashley Laiken, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
If you're watching or listening, please reach out to her or the show, justicesteamnetwork.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Justice Team Podcast.
Thank you.